Welcome to ADF Property, the podcast where we talk about all things property investing and real estate for Australian Defence Force personnel. Whether you're looking to build and scale a property portfolio or relocating across Australia, we've got the insights and tips for less stress and more success. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ADF Podcast. I am here with Kane, Dury. My name is Laine, Poirier. Usually I'm on the other side dealing with you from the relationship manager side of it, but so it's my first time here across the podcast with you, but excited to see what we can uncover.
Thanks, Laine. Good to have you on the ADF Property Podcast. We'll go easy with you with your training wheels.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. But last time we were here, I know you had Ross on the podcast to discuss a little bit more about the broking side and all of that. How did you kind of find the findings, or what was the feedback? Yeah,
it was great feedback. Increase in audience from the month prior. Ross is obviously a wealth of knowledge there. British Marine, so spoke to the military audience very well. So, yeah, it was a great episode.
Yeah, and it was amazing to uncover some of the findings that we had there. You have a special guest with us here once again today, if you want to make the introduction there.
Yeah, so today someone that I'm pretty keen to have on the episode, and potentially we'll have maybe make a series, but we've got Wayne Bemet from most of the military community generally have a name that ends in like I'm a Kane, and we've got Bemo with us today. So Bemo is a financial planner. National Financial Services. Welcome, Wayne.
Hey, Kane, mate, absolute pleasure to be here, and really great for the opportunity to have a chat about this. I think some interesting stuff that we can have a chat for sure.
Yeah, excellent.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Kane, I'll let you take over some of the questions. I know you have a lot of things that you guys wanted to uncover within this podcast today. I'll be able to dive in and get some deeper insights into kind of how our audience looks to explore with that.
Yeah, excellent. So pretty keen to get Bemo's insights, bit of a wealth of knowledge when it comes to property, but also, I guess, he's a financial planner, so there's quite a unique set of skills there that we can dive into. Yeah. But Bemo does a lot with the greater defence community, but instead of me speaking about that, why don't you tell us a little bit about, I guess, National Financial Service first, and then we'll dive into your sort of journey with property.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So, we've been up and running since 2017.
Yep.
Seems like a long time ago now, but it was on the back of my medical discharge from the Royal Australian Navy. Yep. Blew out both knees and shoulders and all the head, shoulders, knees and toes, all the good stuff. So essentially, the Defence Force said, your employment is no longer required. So stepping through that, I guess the universe, mate, pointed me in a different direction of how I can still be involved with the community, the Defence Force community, because it's one of those things that I was really grateful for my time in service. Started out as a radar plotter, or a CSO as they're known these days. Well, they might even be a different name now, who knows. But looking in front of a radar screen on warships for 12 hours a day. But it's something I just really took to, went up through the ranks and just really enjoyed my time. Operational 5 times and came back in one piece, which is great. But it was that whole military experience, I guess, that taught me to be more responsible with money, because I started my Defence Force career a little bit later than most. I was 23, so old and grey and crusty at 23, right? So a lot of people that join are like 17, 18, straight out of school or the academy or wherever they come out from. So I was kind of like the old man, but I'd had that life experience of I've been out and done a whole heap of stuff, life experience, got kicked in the butt a few times, knocked down, but you pick yourself up. And I followed my brother in. So my brother Aaron was in the service and just followed him in. So it was that great experience in the military career, paying attention to my finances. Now, look, initially I was not great. I will admit that. But my lovely wife Bridget, I will give a shout out to. So she's my rock. She's always been very good, and that sort of set me on the journey of, creating wealth whilst I was serving and making the most of my time in service, but also post-service. Well, how can I give back to my military community through some acquired knowledge that I had not only through my career, but even now that my career finished in 2017, and I've had 7 or 8 years out in the wild, mate. As in we call you guys normal people, I guess. So non-military or civvies, and be able to bring that experience back. So National Service Financial was born on the back of that.
Yes, that's amazing. So I guess a little bit deeper, you being obviously an established buyer's agent across Australia here, like how did you guys connect? Obviously through that military background, but what is kind of the story there?
Yeah.
I think there is always that element of rapport when you meet someone else or meet someone for the first time and you're both, defence or ex-defence. I probably can't remember where we first met, but it was just I knew Bemo and his business and what he did, and it was just like knowing of each other. But it was probably more recently that we connected and started working with a few clients and keeping in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, although you might not have actually met in our time in service, you certainly do know of people, and particularly once you're out. So I didn't realise I was a bit of an entrepreneur until it kind of happened. I kind of fell into it. It was a little bit accidental, but made a really good go of it. So I'm always interested in other veterans, especially people like Kane, who are just out and about and making the best of their life after service. Because for a lot of people, unfortunately, there's injuries and capacity issues where people might not be able to make that leap from military to civilian, because it's tough. Because we're indoctrinated, we get given everything, we're fed, we're clothed, we're told we're awesome, and then your identity gets taken away. So it can be hard, but I'm always looking for people who with those like-minded goals, and Kane was certainly one of those. And I think it was just through social media and just being around the traps, and I guess through you guys getting your word out, and National Service Financial, we getting our word out as well. Just saw the planets aligned a bit, mate.
And there's continuity across the two businesses,
definitely.
with the client.
Shared values for sure.
Yeah, that was the connection there. But to circle back, so we'll get into, there's a fair bit of breakdown, but going back to the start, what year did you enlist?
Mate, I was the very first intake of the new millennium.
Right.
So in January 2000.
January 2000.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. My brother had already been in since, 97 or 96.
Yeah.
Over on one of the DEs. It's the one that got blown up by the torpedo. Can't remember which one it was. Not for real, but as a wreck. But yeah, mate, first intake of 2000. It was.
So 2023, and then the .com intake. And how long till you
Make me sound younger, mate.
You got to die trying.
Yeah.
So what got you? Where did property come into the piece? Was there much like your, I guess, Navy is sort of different to the military. Like you're in a confined space a bit and have a lot of time to yourself. Like how did property get introduced to you while serving? Yeah,
I think it's one of always those things that was a goal of mine as a younger man, to always have my own little piece of Australia and get a roof over my head, as I like to call it, with the people I give a hand to. But being able to do that, serving in the Defence Force allowed me to do that. It gave me a regular paycheck, and it was steady. I can actually do some solid planning around that. Yeah. So I was very clear in what I wanted to achieve, because I did join a little bit later. So I'd had those life experiences and worked out what it was like to work really, really hard for not much cash. But the Navy stuff really agreed with me. I loved it. And I was with my now wife. We'd been together since 1995, so we'd already been together 5 years. But we were both very clear. So I joined the Navy. She went and got a teaching degree, and it was that time in service that allowed us to start building that little bit of wealth just from that inception point. So it wasn't until, I guess, it was 2003 we got married.
Yeah.
House, baby, all the good stuff. So we talk to people about this all the time, about these life milestones that happen that clicks with people's brains. Because first couple of years I was in, my own admission, a little bit loose. Seaman, able seaman, brave new world, sailing around Australia and the world and having a really good time. But I realised, geez, I'm working really, really hard here, and I want to have more to show for it. So that was probably the driving thing around firstly settling down and getting married. I made my wife wait 8 years, which she reminds me about consistently.
I was going to say, while we're talking milestones, a quick little segue. If my math's right, are we coming up to a 30-year wedding anniversary?
Well, no, it took me 8 years to pop the question,
30, right.
Which is a little bit of a sore point.
Mate, you get less than murder these days.
I know. No, we did have our 20-year anniversary last year. So it was great. We went to the Maldives and all the rest of it. But it was that, the ability to build wealth whilst in service and after it. This allows us to do cool stuff like that. And property certainly was that starting point for me.
Yeah.
So I guess circling back, as you mentioned, you started obviously your whole journey. You mentioned you're bad at the whole savings and getting all that
absolutely.
going. But when did you
Absolutely.
kind of start kind of that journey? When was that kind of that point that you and your wife either bought the first property, and where are you guys kind of at now in that journey?
Yeah, marriage. Got married. First son. I've got two boys, Kyle and Cooper. They're 21 and 17 now, so I'm feeling a little bit old.
Yeah.
But it was really that life jolt, as in, hey, you're doing some good stuff. You've joined the Navy. September 11 happens, and that changed our lives forever as well. So, there's lots of golf trips going on, lots of time away, getting paid well. So it was that real point of, if I'm going to be away from my family for long periods of time, and I think with our first trip up on Melbourne in 2002, the workups and all the rest of it and the time away, it was around about 9 or 10 months away from the family. So I made that conscious decision pretty much from there. If I'm going to be away and be working my butt off, and I want to make sure it's worth it, not only just for me, but also my family. Yeah. So it was really that moment of inception. And not everyone gets there, but I guess having a little bit of an older head at, 23 or 24, it certainly helped, that's for sure.
Yeah. So the first property then, how far
mate.
into service was that?
Mate, that was 2003. So
been in about 3 years.
Yeah. Got some savings behind it. First golf trip. So I was very diligent about getting money put away from, you remember all the allowances that we were getting going up there.
Yeah.
So we bought a...
So how long ago were you how long were you in the Gulf for?
Yeah, so we did a 6-month deployment on HMAS Melbourne, but inclusive of the workups before we even went.
Yeah, okay,
It was about 9 months.
Yeah.
I think it was like a 13 or 14-week workup.
And then you probably have come back with a bang full of cash.
Yes.
And how far from when you got back did you make that first purchase?
It was about 6 months.
Yeah, okay.
So it was got back, put a ring on my now wife's finger, which she was really happy with, courtesy of the diamond markets in Dubai. So she was very happy with that. But it all happened, quite quickly. I wanted to, have this lump sum in my hand, and back then property was nowhere near what it is now. So I was living on the Central Coast, which I still am. I bought a 3-bedroom hardy plank home on a main road for 180 grand. Because that's what we could afford at the time, and I was just stoked. I mean, this is my own little piece of Australia for me and my family. Yeah,
right. I'm just hearing on a main road, and my due diligence checklist is turning over their head, saying that's a fail, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's one of those things, Kane. Like, I think a lot of people want to step into the brand new McMansion and spend $1 million on their first home. You certainly don't have to do it that way. You've got the capacity to do it. But I treated it as, if I've got the ability to get into the market somewhere, I know there's going to be some upside.
Yeah. So how long did you hold that for?
18 months.
Yep. And you did a reno?
Short reno. We got some allowances from the Navy from buying a new place. It was about maybe 12 grand. So
HPAS?
HPAS.
Yep.
There we go, mate. So I put some hardwood floors down, got the electrical done and painted it. And the property spike wasn't too far after that in 2003. So within 18 months, we had real estate agents knocking on our door. And we sold it 8 months later for about 350 grand. So in a very short period of time, I went, okay, well, what do we do here? Do we just sit pretty and watch our price go up, or do we look a little bit further? So I'm pretty ambitious both in career and in my financial endeavours as well. So, we took the money and ran and went on to our next property.
Yeah. So 18 months and we've almost essentially doubled our...
It was just one of those, timing was perfect. I certainly didn't have the knowledge back then to understand that the timing was right, but for whatever reason, I was still able to understand what the opportunity looked like and the ability to grab the profit there and put it on a bigger property, more suitable for a growing family as well. And it's not on a main road.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations, it's better to be in the market and not know the timing basically than out of the market, right? And I think that's exactly that.
In the market.
And then that was exactly it. You just hit the perfect timing based on that spike and then resulted in that.
And where was that one? Like suburban...
Yeah, that was in Berkeleyville on the Central Coast.
Yeah.
I grew up on the Central Coast. I've lived there since 1986.
Yeah,
so.
and you were posted there at...
Yeah, at the time I was at Woolloomooloo on Melbourne. I stayed on the coast the whole time and decided to travel.
Yeah,
to give my family some security. But I was either going down to Woolloomooloo, Fleet Base East on ships, and Watson's Bay even for my short trips, and also Williamtown. We did a bit of work with the Air Force.
Cool. And then, so there was another property purchase next. How soon after selling?
Pretty much straight away. So we saw the land. It was in a beautiful area. Bought the land for, I think it was around about 180 grand or something like that, which back then was pretty big because I'd spent 180 grand in total on my first purchase. Now I'm just purchasing the land, and we built a pretty big house on it at the time, and I think the total spend was like 490 grand. But back then, that was in 2004, leading into 2005, was, wow, like, this feels like a lot of money. And back then it did. But I could understand the way property operates in Australia. It's very different to most of the world, and you'll listen to the media around, the property bubble's going to burst. And mate, I've been hearing that since 2003, since I bought my first property. So, the media is just mostly full of designed to put fear into people who are actually trying to get ahead. Yeah.
Cool. And where was that one, sorry?
Yeah, that was out at Tudaway Point on the Central Coast.
Coast, yeah.
Still the Central Coast.
Yep.
We really enjoyed our time there, but as the boys got older and we got a little bit wiser and a little bit restless, we're starting to do really well financially. Let's have a look at what the market's doing and maybe upgrade to our next purchase. So. My wife wasn't necessarily a fan of it initially because it's another big move, and I call her quite affectionately the Minister for War and Finance. So it's a good thing she is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the place we're in now. But we're just sort of a little bit restless. The boys were getting older. It's not that we were running out of room, but we were a little bit isolated out on the point where we were. So we started looking around. Certainly, a bigger property. I'd always wanted to live on an acreage, so we started looking around that, and that was coinciding with my time in the Navy was coming to an end as well, which I didn't expect. So all this stuff was happening really quite quickly. So it was a lot to put together, but I think we listed it for around about $950,000. Made some decent money there. It was when the market was in a little bit of a downslide though. That was in 2017, 2018. So I thought we might have made a little bit more, but I also understood the premise, as you do, Kane, around, well, if you're in the same cycle, if you're selling for less, you're actually going to pick up a bargain if you get the right property. Buy and sell in the same market. Buy and sell in the same market. Absolutely. So, my knowledge was certainly growing around property, and I guess one thing that we've been good at as a family is understanding what opportunity looks like, particularly in the property space.
Which 490 in and then 900 out, still,
that's still a great return of
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing area, and I think it's impressive to see the growth and the wins that you've been having in each one of these properties. Has there been any learning lessons?
Absolutely. So we had an investment property lingering in the background up in Ripley Valley near Ipswich. So that's right near RAF Base Amberley, which is now a super base. Really, it's in the western corridor of Brisbane. Really, strong growth area. So we got in there. Might have been 2017, 2018 for around about 420.
Was this while you were still holding the second property?
Correct.
Living there?
So we're thinking about, we're at Tudaway Point. How can we sort of, we're making some good money. How do we, maybe get a separate investment property, not just the property we're living in? So did my due diligence around that and just my own research. And not everyone's capable of that. It took a lot of time. I think I wish I knew about you back then to save me a lot of time and heartache because it can be quite onerous. But we found a good place that we think there was some growth in, and that was Ripley Valley, and that did quite well. We went from 420 to maybe about 550 or something like that. But then the opportunity to come up to buy the acreage at that same time. So had to make the decision of, do we hold on to Ripley Valley, sell Tudaway Point, and then move in, put all our chips in on this acreage on the Central Coast. So, and unfortunately, it's not all, rainbows and lollipops. Our tenant at Ripley Valley was just absolutely atrocious. So, one of the lessons learnt was, we were desperate to get a tenant in there and getting the thing paid for. So we had some people in there. They had some pets. They just weren't the greatest people, and the people managing it weren't great either. So they'd either be behind in rent, and on the inspections, there's holes in the wall. The dogs have been weighing on all the brand new carpet. It was just really disappointing. It did sour my experience initially, but I thought, what, take it for what it is. It's a learning point. You still made some money from capital growth, which is great, but having the right professionals to get you to help you manage it is also really important. We found in that, so we made the decision to sell.
Yeah.
Sold Chitaway Point as well, and away we go. And started looking for acreages, which was really interesting because I'd always wanted some big open spaces. So it wasn't massive, but it was in that same market of around about 2017, 2018, I think, where there was a little bit of a downturn. So we knew there was going to be some bargains out there.
Yep. And then, so you're buying the acreage now?
Yeah.
Yep. And that was back on the coast? Central Coast?
Yeah,
cool.
So that was in Glenning Valley. So it's a really nice tucked away area. It feels like you're rural, but you're not. You're 5 minutes to Westfield Shopping Centre and the freeway, and 5 minutes to the beaches and the golf courses.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice little spot. We picked that up for just under $1 million, and then let's put some renovations in it, see what this thing looks like. 5 years later, we had it appraised. It's around about anywhere between 2.3 and 2.5 million. So it's one of those things where understanding what you're buying from a property sense, particularly from a scarcity point of view. So we knew there was bugger all blocks of land in that area. The house on it was a little bit older, but we knew that. We knew you'd have to spend a little bit of capital on that, but we also knew what it could look like. Fortunately, they had that property spike as well in 2018 into the start of 2019. COVID happens. The start of 2020. But if you're in a good property, that will stand the test of time, particularly here in Australia, if you get it right in that first instance. And that's certainly what we found with that one.
Yeah, nice. So that was purchase 18-19, and then you were sort of a couple of years into National Financial Service at this point, like in the financial planning space.
2 years in.
Yeah,
2 years in. We started out with just a little small business hub office space, probably half the size of this studio, maybe. With an old laptop and a pretty crappy website, and one other person helping me as a paraplanner, and just made a go of it. We literally started the business as COVID was kicking off for real. So we had this concept in 2017. I think there's something there, but by the time we ramped it up full time, it was good. We had office space and all the rest of it. COVID happened. I went, holy,
what's this?
This is not great. But again, it was part of that journey that really put some steel in us as well.
Yeah.
So if we can survive COVID as a startup in finance, we can do anything.
Yeah. And what made you kind of dive heavily into that area? Was there a whole background on that, or was it just an area of the niche that you kind of felt this is something I want to dive into, or how did you kind of get associated in that?
Look, I educated myself whilst I was serving as well as a plan B. I really enjoyed my time in the Navy. Started it as a radar plotter, but ended up working in the back of an E7 Wedgetail controlling fighter jets, which is amazing. So, I was really happy with that piece, but I knew if something did go wrong, I needed a plan B. So when I deployed, I'd always be reading or doing some external courses, nothing too heavy, just enough to keep me ticking over. And then all my injuries happened, and I thought, okay, these plan B's about to be enacted. So I didn't realise how strong my network was until I actually got out, and then some people tapped me on the shoulder, said, mate, we can give you a hand. What do you think about finance? You guys are doing pretty well. I want to do this for a living. And I had this idea of, well, I could do it, but I think I don't want to do it for everyone. I want to have my niche as Defence Force people. I know them really well. There's that rapport and camaraderie and that shared life experience. So that's what sort of made me dive into that. And then once I realised what certain people were going through medical discharge and receiving large sums of money, they literally didn't know where to start their life after defence. So we essentially helped them with financial planning around setting them up for the next 20, 30, 40 years around their finances. So that was and Department of Veteran Affairs funds it as well. That's a bit of our secret sauce as well. As we want to leave as much money in the pocket of the veteran as possible, take the money off the table from DVA and provide an essential service. Yeah,
that's incredible.
So we were just having a chat outside before coming in, and you were like going back to through your journey of property, because you mentioned equity and profit taking is kind of like your. Is that like your key theme? Was that a deliberate approach at the time? Was that just looking back, sort of how you
Yeah, it wasn't initially.
Yeah.
I was just stoked to, from my first purchase, I was just proud as punch that I had a house on the main road, right?
Yeah.
That I could put some hardwood floors in and get some downlights. I thought I was the king of Berkeley Bar, right? But as I stepped through my journey and my education got better, and just from a ton of reading, I started to understand the property cycles, which is certainly a thing that I had to come up to speed on, and understanding where we were at as a family as well. If we're growing, are we happy here? Is there opportunity? And I'm an ambitious person, both in career and in finance and producing wealth for myself and my family. So it was always that, okay, what's next? And that sort of grown from that. I'm like, okay, kind of know what I'm doing here, so let's just keep going on that. So equity is huge, and I think that's something that, whilst it's a basic type of concept, I don't think people understand it in a level that they need to actually use it as a tool. As in, probably the right term is usable equity. Everyone's got equity in their property. Well, not everyone, but if you've bought in the right spot and you've done the right thing and you're paying down, you're going to have a difference between what you paid for it and what your house is worth. And what you can do is you can use 80% of that as usable equity to leverage into potentially another property, or even in leveraging into a managed portfolio as well. So it's making best use of what we call bad debt. Everyone thinks that mortgage is a good debt. Kind of is, that as it gets a roof over your head and you get to live there, but it's actually not producing you money. So we like to use the terms, okay, if you're leveraging from an equity perspective, let's turn this into good debt, as in tax deductible debt. That's also going to make you money as well. So that's the equity piece. And profit taking, absolutely. If the money's on the table and the timing's right, everyone will get a different feel for it. But it's also, you've got to back yourself as well. A lot of people will not want to jump out of that, I guess, that security blanket of just being in their home and I'm going to pay off the mortgage for the next 30 years and that's it. And some people are happy with that, and that's okay. There's absolutely no dramas with that. But for people that are wired a little bit differently, like I guess myself and you, Kane, around property and understanding that it can be used as a stepping stone to creating greater wealth, that's certainly what I was about as well.
So looking back at kind of like your journey with property, but also your career in the defence, what top 3, 5, 7, whatever you like, tips would you give to the defence men and women out there? Give us your punchy 3 or...
Punchy 3. Look, the theme that I always talk to, even I talk to my sons around this, is making the most of your time in service or even the workforce.
Yeah.
So one thing I really appreciate about my time in service is that it was bloody hard work, and it was satisfying. But if you won't make the most of it from a financial point of view, well, what's the point? Yes, it's good to come back with a chest full of medals and serve your country at the highest level and on the world's biggest stage at times. But if you're still living in service residence and you're 50 years old and you got nothing behind you, that's going to cause some real trouble when you potentially retire at, because our guys can retire at 55 or 60. But if you don't have a roof over your head, that can spell trouble, because people just get so used to living in service residence, getting RA, getting everything subsidised, medical and dental's paid for, you're fed, you're clothed. All of a sudden, when you leave, that gap just widens massively, and you've got to try and make that up. So that's my first means, make the most of your time in. The second one is just pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on, not only with your career, but it's hard because you get immersed in your job because you're required to, but pay attention to what's going on at home and with your finances. In particular, your military superannuation. That's massive because, as you know, mate, it's a dark art. You and I were brought up on MSBS, and it's probably the best super fund I've ever come across. But if you don't understand what you're looking at and how you can be better or growing that in a better way, you're wasting dollars and zeros on the end of your retirement, in my opinion.
I think it's one of my biggest regrets while in defence was not paying enough attention to super, because compare it to any other super fund and it's phenomenal what it does, but I just didn't know that till I'd already left.
Absolutely, mate. And I think we're in an era now where people are more educated.
Yeah.
So MSBS was great. It's a defined benefit. You essentially can't do anything with it until you leave. But now there's ADF Super for the guys and girls now, which I think was in around about 2016. So you can actually do more with the super these days, as in just because you're not serving anymore. It doesn't mean you have to still stay in your ADF Super or even your MSBS. You can take your member and ancillary benefit and potentially form self-managed super funds with your significant other or partner. And that's what we're looking to really explore with the right type of person.
Well, we rolled our member benefit out of MSBS, started a self-managed super fund, and acquired 2 properties in the super fund. So you can still do it. Like, there is this misconception that because you're in defence and you're part of MSBS or whatnot, that you can't have a self-managed super fund. But at the time, my wife was also Queensland Health, and you'd probably know. So Queensland Health, you can't contribute to. Well, at the time, I'm not up to date with the current, but you can't contribute to a self-managed super fund, but you can roll over once a year. So we'd established the self-managed super fund. We purchased our first property. Yeah. But then each year she would roll over from Queensland Health to our self-managed super fund.
So just those cycles.
And the rent kept it going nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people have got they're a bit upset with, I guess, if we're not talking about military super, which is fantastic. So people who may have gotten out and they're out working in the big bad world and they're in another super fund, right? A, they don't know that it can drag their member and ancillary. And B, they're just signing up to a fund they know nothing about. So I'm not knocking like Host Plus or CBUS or any of these industry funds. They are what they are. But I think there's so much more information out there. There's no reason why you should be in a super fund that's underperforming. But unfortunately, these funds overall do underperform because they have rules around liquidity. They have to have at least 30% of their funds in cash or in reserves, whereas self-managed super funds, 10% liquidity, and you've got a freedom of choice with what you want to invest in as well.
I think there's even a few lenders now that don't have post-purchase liquidity requirements.
Correct.
Yeah. But going back to your first point, like you mentioned, sort of kind of planning and making the most of your time. Laine, you probably see the most amount of investors come through this studio, like property investors specifically.
Correct. Yeah.
There's so much to consider, like from building an investment portfolio when it comes to planning and not just trying to do it off the cuff, I guess. But then with the defence personnel, they've got HPAS, they've got the DOHAS loan. We're actually purchasing a property that's under contract at the moment in Townsville for a fella. He's a lieutenant in the Army.
Townsville's going gangbusters, mate.
Yeah, he's posting at the end of this year from Puckapunyal to Townsville. So he's using the First Home Buyer Saver Scheme, DOHAS and HPAS all in one transaction.
Yeah.
And then his plan that he'll actually live in that for however long he needs to meet all his requirements, and then he'll post away to maintain. Then it becomes an investment where so obviously it will be rented out as well as DOHAS contributions, and that one will be essentially a foundation of his.
Yeah.
So there was so much planning that went into that, and he has been pondering this for the last 6 months. And then, he's made this very strategic sort of purchase to maximise all his benefits. So,
which a lot of people don't know about as well, Kane.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't realise how much is actually there to give the member the lift up that they need to actually do this. It's kind of like they've got the blinkers on, or they might be the old rumours at the water cooler or down the pub saying what you can and can't do. The thing I always get, someone told me about my military super, I can or can't do this. So, okay, if you want to take the advice from down the pub, away you go. There's certainly no dramas there, but you're most likely going to get it wrong.
I think in the general investing community, it's the barbecue mafia.
That's exactly. Yeah,
100%. Uncle Arne and Bob and Jenny said, do this or don't do that.
So everyone knows better of what's those backyard conversations of where to invest.
And then the military focus probably had advice from their mate down at the pub,
Yes.
A few deep as well.
At least probably 4 or 5 deep. It's where the wisdom normally starts to flow. Can I say that?
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting, I think that's probably a new question for you on each of the shows, this Punchy 3. I think that's a nice takeaway to get really insight of what's going on with it. But what's next for you guys? Like, what's next in your journey? Where are you kind of looking right now?
Yeah.
What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so from a personal journey, so we're at the moment weighing up the pros and cons of selling up and moving north. My body's in a terrible God's country.
He's had enough of the Blues, so he's like chucking a maroon.
I will always be a Blue. We actually won one this year, which was great, mate. So
you're going to enjoy it when you get in there. Fuel farm between drinks.
So look, most people agree my body's putrid anyway, but I've got a titanium knee. My left ACL's gone. I've got screws in my shoulder, and the winters in Sydney in the coast are just getting a little bit tough to bear. So We've got family up north as well, so the time has come to probably migrate north and start working my tan and my golf handicap a little bit more. So that's from a personal point of view, but it's also we're taking that as an opportunity to expand the business as well.
Absolutely.
So we know there's some heavily concentrated centres, particularly in Brisbane, Townsville, where there's a lot of serving and ex-serving personnel. So, we've got our headquarters at Tuggerah on New South Wales Central Coast, but the ability to get boots on the ground north of the border certainly is appealing, and it's also great from a lifestyle point of view as well. So that's where we're at. Yeah,
Townsville. Yeah. So while we're on the topic, 9th
my
of
next
October.
I was just about to ask you. I was literally about to say, so feel like Townsville is a big topic. So Kane, you have some exciting things going on up there.
Yep. So we're holding a ADF Property Workshop in Townsville, the North Shore Tavern. So the locals will know where that is. Got quite a few registrations already. It's launched about just under 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 9th of October. We'll have a NAB lending specialist, obviously Defence Bank, Australian Military Bank, and NAB are the three that can write the DOHAS loan. So Krista Giacomo at NAB will be speaking, covering all the sort of grants, HPAS, HEPSIA, DOHAS. And we'll also have Cody Dart, who is statistically probably Townsville's best agent and ex-infantry. So he'll be speaking on the local Townsville economy, and obviously myself will be there hosting the event, and we'll just go through property investing, strategy, national markets as well. So if you're in Townsville, jump on Eventbrite, have a look, or just head over to discoverbuyersagency.com.au and love to see you all there.
Beautiful. All right. Well, look, guys, first off, I want to say thank you guys for your service and everything that you guys have done. It's been an amazing chat, and especially for my first time, thank you guys for being nice to me and nice, kind. But want to just say, if anyone looks at more questions or looking at more insight on where to invest with property across Australia, please head over to smartpropertyinvestment.com.au for any of those needs. So thank you for your time, Kane, and look forward to seeing you guys next episode.
Cool. And thanks to Bemo for driving down from the coast to be with us and share your story and insights. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.